How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Tech Support Thursday. I know it's Friday and it's evening time for most of y'all, but I have been busy this week with work and some other stuff, so I didn't really get an opportunity to dig into it this week. I actually really haven't had a whole lot of time to do anything because I had actually quite a bit of travel this week. So anyway, but the show must go on, and so before I get into any questions, I know people like to know where I am in my certification journey and all that type of stuff. For work, I am working on some Fortinet certifications. They redid their certification portfolio recently, and now they have the FCF, the FCA, the FCP, so on and so forth. So I'm working right now through my FCF. I hope to have it knocked out this weekend or sometime Monday. I should be able to knock that out. Um, that's work commitment. On the personal side, I have been slowly working my way through the CCDE playlist, and which I know is going to benefit me when it comes to taking the SP Lab. I don't know when I'm going to be taking that though. There's really no. I could just book it. Like I could log right into Cisco's website and go book it, but I just there's still a lot left to cover. I'm in really no hurry to get there. It's one of those things where I've been reading the documentation and I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound like it'd be that hard to do. I've been reading the documentation, reading Nick's book. I've been testing things out, trying to get stuff to work, things like that, and they've been kind of interesting to say the least on how they come together. But I'm making my way through it. I was able to knock out. I spent a lot of time on MPLS traffic engineering, so I've been doing a lot with that. So let me actually think here. So I was able to do both class-based and policy-based tunnel selection. I also started diving into diff-serve aware TE with the different models. You know, the pre-standard model, Russian dolls, and then the maximum allocation model, and going through that. And so been making my way through that. I've also been like if something doesn't make sense or I run into a problem with it and I'm like, I just don't want to deal with that right now, I circle back and I've got multiple topologies running at one time. I have one big topology. I'll show you real quick what it looks like. It's actually pretty big, but the goal is to be able to do a whole bunch of different stuff. I had to refresh this real quick. Sorry about the blast of white. But so got my trusty Metallica shirt on, by the way, in case anybody cared. So this is my topology that I'm working with. It has allowed me to demo a lot of different capabilities and techniques. So it's allowing me to do both layer 3 VPN, layer 2 VPN. I should be able to do seamless MPLS, unified MPLS. They're basically the same thing. It's like core, ag, access, that type of stuff. And MPLS traffic engineering, LFA. It should be able to allow me to do a lot with one topology. And the idea, really, when you think about it from a service provider perspective, and you look at the blueprint for a particular track, especially when it comes to service provider, route switch, data center, collaboration, security, wireless. So basically any of the verticals that there's CCIEs for, and you want to become a rock star in that particular vertical, my recommendation is become really good with it in one big topology. Like stand up a topology like this, and then know how to do everything with that particular capability. So that when you go to a multi-AS design or multiple sites, you're replicating a lot of the things you already know. So you're just having to focus on the things that are specific to that particular variation. You know, MPLS, layer 3 VPN, inter AS option A, B, C, D, you know, then carrier supporting carrier, stuff like that. Those should come down further down the road. You should really have a mastery of your intra-AS service provider technologies before you dive into anything inter-AS. I'm not saying you can't, but in my opinion, when you're diving into your technology portfolios that you need to go learn, those are going to be the things that are going to benefit you long term. Is basic learning the basics to every one of the capabilities. So can you stand up MPLS-TE without having to reference documentation? And it's going to be one of those things where the more comfortable you get, if you can get OSPF running everywhere, if you can get BGP working on your provider edges, and then a route reflector in the core somewhere, and all that type of stuff. If you can stand up an entire MPLS Layer 3 VPN from scratch with the same route distinguisher, same route target everywhere, and you're in good shape there, then you can start building off of what you already know. So it's going to be adding, okay, I know how to do this, I know I can add that in, I can add this in, and it's just one more step closer to your goal. And I highly recommend everybody get a spreadsheet and they start putting the exam topics into the spreadsheet so that they know what they have to go tackle. And some things you won't be able to demo, and I understand that, but everything you can demo, I would. For example, which one is it? Is it this guy? Routing, multicast, layer 2, right here. So I know for a fact when I get to Layer 2 VPN on iOS XR, the bulk of it is not supported in the data plane, if not everything. So it's one of those things where, if I wanted to do eVPN on XR, I'm still going to go through all of these, the documentation, right? And it'll be configure eVPN VXLAN Layer 2 Data Center Interconnect Gateway, DCI. So if I come down here, it's going to be, okay, what do I got to do to make that work? Well, a lot of the configuration is going to be basically the same or logically the same as it would be for VXLAN eVPN on Nexus. So there's going to be a lot of correlation on how it comes and goes, eBGP multi-hop and things like that. So there's no topology, I don't think, in this setup here. I'd have to go look. But you got the bridge domain. But the idea would be to basically take all the config. Let me go back to the top here. There are some topologies. So that's redundancy group, Mac learning, native eVPN, dual home, dual active, all active load balancing. So the idea would be to essentially take all of these configure XYZ, all these variables, which I haven't gone through all of these, so don't hold me to the fire. But if you were to go through all of these, by the time you're done with it, you should be able to stand up a particular solution. It's not going to work in the data plane, right? That's the big thing to keep in the back of your mind is when if you're demoing this, they're expecting you to be configuring this on hardware where the services are supported. I'm doing this in a virtual environment where the services aren't supported. So it's going to be, what do I got to do to configure it so that, am I going to get tested on it in the lab? You never know. If I look over here, it does state very clearly right here, when I get down to carrier Ethernet, it does call out, where is it? Access connectivity. I could be wrong. They call me a liar, isn't it? Where did I see eVPN? Right here. Right. eVPN. Somebody typoed. Single home and multi-home. So eVPN, virtual private wire service, ELAN, integrated routing and bridging. So if you're familiar with how PBB eVPN works, the big thing here is going to be it's going to be moving over to VXLAN. So is PBB not a thing anymore? I mean, it's right here, provider backbone bridging. So you're going to need to know how it works, right? How to configure it. So you're going to go through and configure it. You're going to have to look at I'm sure there's a topology in here somewhere that's going to give you reference to it, or you might have to Google for it. I mean, so flow label, that might be all the topology they give you, but okay, right there. So PBB EVPN on single home network. So here's the config, right? They basically lay it out for you. You're just going to want to demo it, configure it, look at the control plane, verify some things. The control plane will probably work, but the data plane won't. But this way here, the likelihood of Cisco testing something in the at the NP advanced exams. So if I was to come over here real quick and look at certifications, and then look at browse certifications, and then look at professional and say CCNP service provider, and then we look at this looks like it would be the advanced. Let's look at both of these. The VPN is the one I'm more interested in seeing, because that's going to be the topics that you're going to be covering. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of just main heavy core routing, right? PIM sparse mode, MSDP, Anycast RP, stuff like that. So you're going to be going through a bunch of this type of stuff. Where is the... Oh, you know what I did? I'm screwed up. I wanted... Wait, the exams. Sorry, not there. Not those two. Close that one out. Close that one out. I want this and this. Exam topics. There we go. So we're going to come back over here. So we'll let that load up real quick. So layer 2 VPNs, for example. If we look in here, what does it call out? You're right there. EVPN, IRB, Virtual Private Wire Service. So the technology's there, even on the CCNP. So it's going to be going through, and it literally does come down to a matter of which one was it? Right there. Going through and configuring it. Do you know how to configure this particular technology? All you got to do is read through the documentation. So that's really essentially all I'm doing as I'm going through. It's like, okay, this is what I got to go do to make this happen. This is what I got to do to make that happen. That type of stuff. And demo it out so that when you're done, I've got a Word doc that I'm using to build all this stuff out in. So I will be following the exam blueprint. It says EVPN, so I'll be doing EVPN, and then how that will come into play. We'll take a look at virtual private wire service, VPLS, HVPLS, both LDP and BGP signaling for that, as well as single and multi-homed EVPN, all that stuff that goes along with it. The big thing, though, is going to be making sure you've covered it, right? So that when you get to the exam, you're not like, oh, okay. Because when you think about it, if you look at this exam, unicast routing, OSPF, IS to IS, I'm sure they're going to be doing more than just route advertisement and summarization, but then you get scalability, confederations, route reflectors, route advertisement, multi-homing confederations, all that good stuff that goes along with it, static tunnels, 6 to 4, 6PE, those are pretty easy. And then you get to multicast routing. You got to understand how to do multicast in a single and multiple domain. Then RPLs and route maps, and then MPLS and segment routing. So here they're only going to be. It's kind of funny how they build off of one another, where you can do all the core routing, right? This exam, right, the SPRI exam. You're going to go through all this, understand MPLS, LDP, the label switch path, unified BGP, BGP free core, RSVP TE tunnels. Then how do you get that to work? You get segment routing and all the stuff that goes along with that. And then segment routing traffic engineering. And then you've got SRv6. So you got, it compounds. And the cool thing about that is it actually flips right over to this. So you look at layer 3 VPN, a lot of the same stuff comes out. All the different variations with that, IPv6 capabilities. So if you compound one exam on top of the other, eventually it will build you up to your CCIE. So that's essentially what I'm doing. There's really not a whole lot to it. To that, and you might say, well, what's the PE to PE? Well, that's going to be inter AS communication for, even though intra AS is PE to PE communication, well, um, you got to build your BGP, VPNP4, and VPNP6 peerings to your route reflector. PE to route reflector. Is there something broken with that? So you have to be able to control all this routing and this connectivity. If you can, great. If you can't, well, then you got to figure it out. You have to look at the documentation, Google stuff. Maybe someone's written a blog post about it. Stuff like that. But this one here doesn't go into hardcore CSC, carrier supporting carrier, but I would still know how to do it. Lab it up, test it out, make sure you know how to work it. So, but that's essentially where it comes to service provider. That's what I would definitely recommend you guys dive into how this stuff works. So if you have any questions on service provider type stuff, I'm going to keep dropping knowledge and try to point you guys in the right direction for that. Bookmark the stuff that you need to have. Like I've got service provider stuff, I got a whole bunch bookmarked. So I would recommend you do the same thing. So let's get to the questions. So I would love to hear some of your stories of working in the ISP industry and what task challenges you had completed. So far, nothing spectacular. I work in pre-sales, so all I'm doing is talking to customers. So I don't do anything in the core. I don't want to do anything in the core. There's a reason why I left the post-sales or the implementation side of it, because it just, I just got burnt out. What was the most amount of money a company has spent to upgrade their network? That's a good question. I've seen, well, there's a couple different ways to answer the question. So I've seen, the last big one I saw that I can remember was about a year and change ago. Was a little over $2 million, and it wasn't even really an upgrade per se. It was a re-architecture and re-engineering. So our job was to come in, understand how everything was put together. It was a lot of discovery, probably one of the biggest and most complicated discovery or assessments I've ever done. You do your assessment, and then once you understand it, you're basically a subject matter expert of that location. And then your goal is to flip all of the IGP connectivity over to BGP and control the routing. So that's when you get into route maps and prefix lists and multiple entries in your route maps and things like that. That's probably the most complicated one I've done in a while. On average, it really varies on how much the customer wants to spend. Because doing hardware upgrades is easy, right? If you want to go from, say, your Cat 3K line of switches, and you want to move into your Cat 9K or Cat 8K line of switches and do the newest whiz-bang wow iOS XE versions that could potentially set you up for DNA, those are easy because you literally just have to take the existing config, maybe massage it a little bit to fit on the new config, put the new hardware into play, dump the config on it, and away you go. It's easy. Hardware upgrades are a piece of cake. Always have been, always will be, much easier than logical reconfigurations or re-architectures. Those are always more complicated because now you're changing the configuration, now you're changing the way traffic forwards. You might run into something you're like, I wasn't expecting that. So those are some very interesting things to keep in the back of your mind when you're looking at from an upgrade perspective. Typically, logical changes are going to be more complicated and more involved than physical upgrades are. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Is this network topology of this series available on Patreon? I saw a different topology on Patreon. So that topology for the Enterprise Blueprint, for the Enterprise series, and for that particular that topology is not available yet. No, it will be soon. I still have stuff left to record on that. So once it's done, that'll be the next big thing to get done. And once that's done, I think I have 3 or 4 more sections to record on, and then that'll be done. Is there any way? Is there a way for SD-WAN transport layer to track internet instead of the next hop? I honestly have no idea. I haven't touched SD-WAN, Cisco SD-WAN in a while. I believe you can through Fortinet though. You can track the link. I think you can do an SLA track, but I wouldn't quote me on that one. Um, this was so motivating and inspiring. Definitely gives us some insight of the job level scope. No worries. Um, Most painful topic in the SP track for you. Good question. So each one was painful in their own way out of the gate, but I would definitely have to say that MPLS traffic engineering, because you got to deal with RSVP, and then if you're dealing with fast reroute, and then you got to deal with bandwidth reservations, I would definitely say that's been challenging up to this point. Segment routing has been challenging, especially when you start talking about how it's a paradigm shift in how labeling is done. So that can be challenging in its own right. There's some stuff that I haven't even dug into yet, like LFA, RLFA, TILFA. I haven't even dove into any of that type of stuff. So, trying to think of what else is out there that would be. Pull up the blueprint real quick, just so I have a visual. Haven't done anything with SRv6 at all. I've done a little bit with segment routing. I've got some on-demand next hop. I've got some what was it? I've got a lab actually built for that in order to do it. I've got a PCE device that I was configuring stuff and pushing the policies down to the PCC, the Path Computation Client, and getting that to work. TE has been probably the most complicated one thus far. Let's see what else is there. Then it's going to be NAT and then multicast. Multicast and QoS. And then your aggregation connectivity, that type of stuff. I'm probably going to struggle in those areas too. But the big thing is that I don't feel like I'm under any pressure. So you might be like, well, when were you under pressure? So back in 2019 at Cisco Live in San Diego, they made Cisco's big announcement was a certification change where they were going to try to unify things and a bunch of other garbage that they ended up pulling. And I ended up losing some certifications because they, made them, they retired them. But what they ended up doing, I think it was right before COVID. So was it April of 2020? May of 2020? Somewhere in there. It was before summer. I remember that, where they were going to transition a bunch of new exams to a newer version. So they were gonna rev service provider, collaboration, data center, wireless, and a bunch of other stuff. And that put me under the gun because I went from having basically all the time in the world to from June till April, May. So what's it, 6, 10, 11 months? And I didn't think it was going to be enough time. I wasn't as far along in my journey as I am now. So I was definitely way more stressed out about it, and it got to the point where I was like, well, this is not looking too good, Charlie. So, and I remember when SPB5 came out, and the way that they were talking about it, there was a big push for segment routing, and I remember just saying I gave up on it. Like I wasn't even going to bother wasting my time, and that's when I started digging in hardcore into VMware, and I started transitioning. But it's you get through it, and now that it's just like, and now the job that I have, I don't have the implementation stress anymore, so I'm able to put that on pause, and then I was able to repurpose literally every one of my servers. I shut down most of them. I've only got a few running right now, and they allow me to just monkey around with stuff now. I can basically turn it into a sandbox, and Am I in any big hurry to get this new second CCIE? Not really. Eventually it'll happen, but do I see it happening before end of the year? You never know, but I'm not letting it. At least I'm trying my best not to let it dictate life. That's the big thing. Most painful topic in switching for you. Port channels was challenging, especially when I got into multi-chassis port channels. I just couldn't wrap my head around it, and then one day it just clicked. It was like somebody explained how it worked, and I just clicked. Most painful routing topic for you, VLANs was for me back then. Redistribution and controlling route feedback with tags. That just threw me through a loop. Most painful data center topic. ACI for me as well. I never really. I tried going down the ACI route a few times. I actually have the book, and I know personally, I know the guy that wrote it. So I definitely. There was that. VXLAN was not easy to learn either, but ACI is one component. I also had a really hard time understanding, or it was UCS, not the server itself, but it was like how some things just weren't clear. A lot of moving parts. But see, the thing is, I'm very hands on when it comes to learning. So, for example, I don't care who I'm watching a video through. I don't care if it's INE or if it's Orhan Ergon or if it's Kawar Butt or any other training platform that's out there. If I'm trying to learn a particular capability or whatever, I will look at trying to get hands-on experience with it. Like I'll follow along, I'll take detailed notes. Like you guys have seen my notes before, they're fairly detailed. But if I can't actually click through what I'm doing, it's very hard for me to try to retain the information. So that's why I'm definitely a big proponent of if you can get it, build a lab with it, you're going to be much better off learning it. So mapping the configuration to Eve was enough for real-life simulations. In my work, I see a lot of bugs come up on iOS version issue. Is Eve enough for that? I have had very few problems with that. I had 3 dedicated servers for a while, probably the better part of a year, running in my basement. Each one had a bare metal Eve community install on it, running Nexus 9Ks and Nexus 9000 Vs, and 2 were VXLAN AVPN multi-site deployments, and another one was a kind of a mishmash of all kinds of things. But because of the 3 major accounts that I supported, I basically had to have their environments stood up in a lab in order for me to make sure that whatever configuration changes we were going to do, I'd throw them into a lab. I'd configure it ahead of time to make sure the expected behavior was going to work out the way that I would do it. Take that information out, drop it into a Word doc, and then that would be my method of procedures for the change. So I was very hands-on with my changes. So especially when you're dealing with healthcare customers or customers where and finance, they are very, very finicky about that type of stuff. Would like to hear one more story incident with some details from your career, like that data center story. Okay. Trying to think back. This was several years ago. I was in the middle of it's not data center specific. It happened in a data center, but it wasn't data center hardware. I was working on a migration from 3750s to 3850s, I think. And the idea was very simple. You take these new pair of switches. They're supposed to be stacked, so you got your stacking cable. So I had them racked, powered, cabled, stacking, and redundant power supplies. So they had the power stack cable going between them as well. And the idea was to have the exact same configuration that was on the old switches on the new switches, and all it was going to be was a matter of moving the cables over. That was it. So we pulled the trigger on that, and unbeknownst to me, I guess there was a lot of other stuff going on. Like I went over to the operations desk and I had them pause some automation job. Um, but beyond that, the something broke. So I was in the middle of the change when somebody from ops said, "Hey, so and so's on the phone." So I picked up the phone and they said that they had lost monitoring, and I was like, huh, okay. So it was, I wasn't really, I was like, okay, yeah, we're in the middle of a migration. Like, well, I'll check back with you in a little while. And he's like, okay, cool. And because we didn't email them ahead of time, even though I had asked, like, who do I need to email? So essentially, what ended up happening was I got everything moved over to the new switches, and um, most things were working. There's just one thing I couldn't get working. I couldn't figure out what it was. Later, I found out I had missed the summary route in EIGRP. I don't know how I missed that, but I did. And so uh, I think I started the change at like 8 o'clock at night, and I stayed with it until like 2 in the morning. Um, the I got woken up. It might have been a little bit later than that. I got woken up at probably 8. Um, my boss called me and said there was a problem. There was like something wasn't reachable, but it had been fixed by one of the other engineers, and so it was a big to do. It turned into a big conference room conversation, and um, it's one of those things where the only thing that I it was a trying to it's been like 10 years. Trying to think back to what exactly it was. I'm pretty sure it was just an EIGRP summary route that was missed, and um, but we're talking back in like 2016, so it's like I don't really remember the specifics to it. Um, but anyway, the problem was fixed pretty quickly, um, and it was one of those things where you end up getting uh, you get the closed door, hey, this can't ever happen again kind of deal. And I'm like, oh, okay. It wasn't intentional. Like, I didn't do it on purpose. And they're like, we know. We just wanted to be clear. And so I was like, oh, okay. Um, the other thing that, so once that happened, the, trying to think back, was there, everything was stable right away, basically by 9 o'clock in the morning. Somebody caught it right away, um, and then it was like going back to figure out why it broke. Because you do a post mortem so it doesn't happen again in the future. And so I was like, well, I had checked with this, I had checked with that. I had asked people on my team, what else should I be looking at? I felt like I had done my due diligence. Um, and, when your senior coworkers that are senior in terms of they have been there longer than me, had told you XYZ should be checked, and I had included everybody in the communication, had done peer review, and I had gotten thumbs up back. So, as far as I was concerned, all of the due diligence pieces that I needed to do were done. So essentially, when that was all said and done, you don't feel really good about what happens because at the end of the day, something went sideways that shouldn't have gone sideways. And so anyway, that was an incident where something broke. Tell us a high stake incident. You can get technical. Something big that didn't work the way you were supposed to, configuration wise, despite you being sure, and how you resolved it. Um, I mean, basically the same question. We'll incorporate both of them. There's that. An American friend told me in the USA, demands for data centers is going down, demand for cloud is going up. What's your opinion on that? Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I see a lot more. I see less and less data center, and I see more and more um, cloud utilization happening. But not everything can be put into the cloud. So, what is cloud made of? Cloud is made up of the same stuff that you would put in your local data center. The same servers from your big manufacturers, Cisco, Dell, HP, so on and so forth. You would install these servers into a rack system, and then you cable them up for power, networking, and all the good stuff like that. You have to figure out the storage, whether it's going to be an HCI, a hyperconverged infrastructure, where all the storage is shoved into the servers themselves, and then you figure out through either Nutanix or vSAN on how to do a distributed vSAN type of environment, or if you use a storage array like an EMC or a NetApp array, and you have some sort of either iSCSI or fiber channel connectivity back to that. We call it a JBOD or a disk array, just a bunch of disks, and you configure that array to be the storage array for the servers through ESXi and things like that. I worked a lot with ESXi. So you take all of those same concepts and you put them in somebody else's data center, a colo facility, Amazon, Azure, so on and so forth. That's essentially what the cloud is made up of. It's the same stuff. It's the servers, the networking, the storage, all the stuff that you would normally do on prem. It's just in somebody else's data center, and you're just paying to rent the time basically. Do you recommend studying data center after the EI track, or studying virtualization first then data centers, or no data center studies are necessary? I would say learn virtualization first, because if you can learn virtualization, then it'll make things that much easier to deal with the data center, because you'll be that much more understanding of how it works and stuff like that. Data center studies are definitely necessary. I would never not do data center studies. Networking, internal company politics. What's your perspective on that? Would love to hear a story or something related to that. Politics are going to be part of any organization you work for. I'm really coming up short with that one. A lot of times, sometimes it's monetary. Whose budget is this project coming out of in order for it to get done? I mean, so yeah, I have to think about that one, because I'm trying to think of a time where budget was the driver. I mean, it's usually there's cost. There was a customer I talked to a little bit earlier today, where they have a bunch of dark fiber stood up between all of their data centers, and they are looking to optimize that because it's costing them a lot of money per month. So we came up with an alternative solution, because they were talking about wanting to get some stuff out of their data center, go to a colo to help with ease of migration to the cloud. And so I was like, well, why don't we just set up an EP LAN or an ELAN type of design, to where you put your data centers, your colos, and then we just get hooks into the big three, and away you go. You can scale it out. If you want to add more colos, you just stand up new layer 2 circuits. Just do an ELAN everywhere. It's usually pretty easy. Doing the videos, does this topology go with the EI workbook you created, or different? Thanks. This is different. The topology in the workbook is dedicated to the workbook. Glad you're finding it motivating. Horror. That was more of a horror story than dumb stuff. Yep, that is true. What was your motivation for starting in IT, or why you have chosen to be in IT? For me, it really comes down to, at the time, we're talking 15 years ago, I needed to make more money somehow. And for some reason, I don't know exactly what the catalyst was, if you will, but for some reason I really wanted to go down the networking path. Thought that was cool. But I've always been into computers since I was real little. So for me, it was just kind of a natural progression. Yep, service provider's on its way. I'm still going to be plugging that out here soon. Can Cisco CML be used as a CCA home lab? It sure can. Yep. Is there somewhere I can download lab import file for this series? Yes, you will, but the topology file you see in the video for this particular series is not going to be available until I'm done recording all the videos. This guy was like, can't start all the Thanks a lot. Did you add the EVNG image yet to your site? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but I won't actually upload any images per se. They're all available through CML. You just have to go buy the license and download them. I only see the old one that had about 12 devices on it. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that one. The subnetting at the start needs to be double checked. It probably does. Can you please provide us with a virtualization courses roadmap and the recommendation resources to study from? If you were to go look at the VMware Technical Sales Associate, I think. Let me think here. If you look for data center virtualization, the VCTA, VMware Certified Technical Associate, I would start here and work your way up. There's a VCTA, VCP, then VCAP design, VCAP deploy, and then VCDX. That's the path I would have you start on. Better to be a master of all trades or specialized. I think it's better to be a master, because then your technical expertise will speak for itself. I hear a lot of senior network engineers that work in the systems integrators that ACI, SD-WAN, SDA are now everything and in huge demand, and it's highly recommended that everyone's specialization is leaning towards these. How accurate and correct is this? I would say it's pretty accurate, but not the end-all, be-all. Not everybody's doing ACI. Not everybody's doing SD-WAN. Not everybody's doing SDA. The thing is, you take these acronyms here, and if you were to walk into every customer meeting you sit in and throw these at the wall, you might get asked to leave. So I would definitely not be walking around with a solution and looking for a problem to solve with it. That is not the way to go about doing it. You definitely want to walk into a customer's environment and understand their pain points first. And then based off of what they're telling you, that's when you start to bring out solutions. And like, okay, if we could do this here to make this easier, and then start going down that path. I wouldn't just say, our three locations have site-to-site VPNs between all three, and we're looking to upgrade the hardware. Well, that is definitely not a use case for SD-WAN. SD-WAN, you would need is there cloud? Do you have users coming and going? Is your perimeter of your network anything outside of these four walls at all three locations? And SD-WAN is a potential there, but SD-WAN isn't a catch-all for everything. For my work, Cisco's Viptela solution is a pain in the bum. Huge amounts of bugs, by no means zero-touch provision, lots of whitelisting problems and certificate problems from the solution itself. What are your comments on this? I've never deployed it in production. I've only tested it in a lab. So I really have no comment on a production deployment, but I do know that if I was to leave the SD-WAN lab running for too long, give it some time, like power it completely off, and then wait a month and power it all back up, it would break. It would not work. So even if I saved all the configs and made sure that I had the copy and I could copy them back in if something went buggy, it just, that was the case. I personally don't have any experience with it in production. And these are just comments on some videos here for hopefully that'll help you guys out when it comes to some stuff. But I'm 45 minutes in. This went a little longer than I was anticipating, but I wanted to knock this video out pretty quick. and get this out to you before the weekend. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, drop that in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch all of you awesome people in the next video.